Now we will study the second situation in under price leadership model in oligopoly, that is how prices are governed by a large firm. So here we assume that there is a large firm which is supplying a major share in the market. So all the small firms will supply a very minor share in the market. Okay, one firm will be the major supplier in the market, and all the other small firms will supply very less share in the market. So now we'll see how a firm becomes the biggest player in the market. Okay, for this let's assume that there is a large dominant firm and a number of smaller firms. The dominant firm alone is capable of estimating market demand curve. Okay, and the dominant firm is in a position to calculate the supply of smaller firms. I'm again repeating, there is a large dominant firm and a number of smaller firms. First condition. Second condition is the dominant firm alone is capable of estimating market demand curve. And the third one is the dominant firm is in a position to calculate the supply of smaller firms. Now, this dominant firm fixes the price and all the smaller firms have to follow those prices. Now, this dominant firm has set up its prices at a very nominal rate. So, maybe the demand for its product may rise up. Okay, because we all know when prices decrease, the demand for the product increases. Now, because the demand is way too high and the smaller firms are not in a position to supply such a good number of output, now this gap between demand and supply will be fulfilled by the leader firm. Okay, now the leader firm will estimate the market demand for the entire industry. So let's assume this is the demand curve for the entire industry. This one. This is the first graph for the industry and this is the second graph for the leader firm. And let's assume that this is the demand curve for the entire industry and this is the total supply curve of the industry of the smaller firms. Okay, so this is price on y-axis. Okay, and on x-axis we will take quantity. Okay, on x-axis we'll have quantity and on y-axis we'll have prices. Now see how this is the point where demand and supply both are equal at this point. Now the leader firm will not set these prices because here the demand is equal to supply. Okay, here at this point demand and supply are equal. I'm again repeating. So what will the leader firm do? It will not determine its prices at this point. Okay, now we have assumed that leader firm will fill the gap between demand and supply, and see at this point there is no gap, right? Demand is equal to supply. So if the leader firm tries to determine the prices at a lower level, let's say at P1, so it will be able to supply only these many units. Okay, only these many units. Suppose let's say only this. Okay, only these many units. Okay, now still there is a gap. There is a gap, right? So we stretch it further and put a point in the leader firm graph. We stretch it further. So I've already drawn the graph, but for better understanding I'm telling you that we will put a point here in the leader firm graph. Now if the leader firm further tries to reduce the prices at say P2 here, okay, at P2. Now because the prices are too low, smaller firms will not be able to supply. Smaller firms, they will not be able to supply. But the demand is too high at these prices. Now the gap has widened further. See, here the gap was a bit smaller. Now it has widened, right? It has widened further. So again we will put a point here, okay? Now what will the leader firm do? It will join all these points, and this will become the AR curve, this, okay, for the leader firm, okay, this point, it will become the AR curve for the leader firm. Now if this is the MR curve and marginal cost curve, this is the MR curve and this is the marginal cost curve for the leader firm. So this is the equilibrium point, okay, point E for the firm, and at this point firm will supply OQ quantity. Now if we join this line by stretching it further and joining it with P1, okay, I've already done it before, but if we stretch it further and join it with P1, okay, so at P1 leader firm will supply OQ quantity. At this price the firm will supply this quantity, the leader firm, okay, and further we can say that the gap between A and B will be same as OQ. Suppose this is A and this is B, okay, so the gap between A and B will be same as OQ. Now the leader firm will determine the prices at OP1, okay, and there is a gap between demand and supply. Now this gap will be fulfilled by the leader firm, okay. This is how the price leadership model by a large firm works.